Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh, and I'm the program coordinator here with Global Connections. We are really excited to have Lorena O'English here with us tonight again to tell us more about the hidden secrets of the WSU Online Library's resources. Before we begin, if you're having any issues hearing me, please feel free to check out the Audio Wizard tool, which is located underneath the Tools tab to make sure that all your connections are set up. We also have the chat box that we've been chatting back and forth a little bit with. If you have any questions or comments for Lorena during her presentation, please feel free to type them directly into the chat box, and either myself or Lorena will respond. And without any further ado, I am excited to welcome Lorena tonight to give her presentation on the database deep dive.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, Josh. So I'm really happy to be here, and you can see, by the way, if you have questions about this, you're welcome to contact me. My email is right here on the screen, and I'm WSU Lorena on Twitter, and I'm really happy to respond to people if you tweet with me or anything else like that. So I always like to start with kind of a little bit of information and some introductions. This is me, and as you can see, this is me. You can tell I like comics here, can't you? This is me, a little cartoonified. This is a drawing of me by Jeff Jacks, who is the webcomic creator of Questionable Content, a webcomic I really like. This is my dog Heidi, and I forgot to change out this page. This was me at, I think this was the George Bush Library last year, but what I wanted to change it out was a picture of my Heidi, because she's an older dog, and we've spent the last couple days dealing with trying to get her on wheels. So it's been interesting, not entirely successful. So before we get started, I wanted to see if anybody wanted to share a story that they have about their a pet, a dog, a cat, or a beloved animal. Doesn't have to exist, can be a comic pet. If anybody wants to share a story. And you can share it in the chat box, or Josh can jump in and tell a story. Well, yeah, I know, here in Pullman we can't always have pets. Bradley, you house it. You know, I did that for years. When I moved away from home, I didn't have pets, and so I house sat. And I was really, and every time I saw a dog or a cat when I was out walking, I was like, please, can I pet your dog? All right, cool. It's funny, it's very appropriate to ask about pets since WSU is a vet school. So I just wanted to kind of start off with that, so you could be thinking about my girl Heidi and her wheels. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm here to talk about databases, and sometimes people say, well, what is a database? And first of all, in the libraries, when we talk about databases, we use a whole bunch of different terms. We might say an article index, or an index, or a database, or just the name of a particular product. But the distinction between a database and just anything else is that a database is a structured set of data held in a computer, or online these days, especially one that is accessible in various ways. And the really important part of this is the structure of it. It's not just a pile of stuff. It's all been indexed and arranged so it can be searched in particular ways. So we're looking here at a record. This is what we call a record in a database. And you can see that it's organized by fields. And I particularly call your attention to the abstract field, the author field, the title field up here, and the subject fields, because these are all searchable. I can say I want things that have the subject term internet, or I want things that mention digital divide in the abstract. And that's the thing that makes a database rather than just a huge big pile of text that you query, because you're able to query it specifically by these particular fields, although if you want to, you can just query the whole thing if you want. You're like, I want the phrase digital divide anywhere it is. I don't care whether it's in the abstract or the title, but it's that ability to draw these distinctions that makes something a database. And that's very powerful when you're searching, because sometimes you really want something very precisely. You're saying, this is so important that my term has to be in the title, or it has to be by this person, or it has to be published between these days. And all of those are things that can be only done with a field searching that can be done with a database. So let's talk a little bit about types of databases. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how do I know which one to use, but we're going to be talking about that all the way through. And when I'm talking about databases here, what I'm really talking about is mostly library databases and subscription databases that libraries subscribe to, but not entirely. So we start off with a subject index, and this can be a specific subject index about chemistry or sociology or art, or it can be something that's multidisciplinary, where a whole bunch of things are together, because often, of course, it turns out that there is a relationship between art and chemistry. If you think about how paints are made, or between sociology and art, where you think about art therapy. So there's always connections. Subject databases, usually we think of them as a place to go to get articles, but you can also find books, dissertations, book chapters, and other kinds of information in them as well. In addition to a subject database, which can include, by the way, scholarly articles as well as other types of articles, and I'll be doing another deep dive a little bit later on types of publications, so that's something we can look forward to. But in addition to that, we also have format databases, and this can be something that's just newspaper articles, streaming media, images. And when I talk about images, I don't want you just to think about library databases. Think about something like Flickr, where you are able to search by date, you're able to search by tag or an assigned term by the creator, you're able to search by whether it's copyright free or not. So that kind of gives us the ability to be a fielded database. You can also have databases that are based upon source, or as we in libraries call it, provenance. And a classic example of that are databases that are government publications, where everything in them has been created by the government entities, city, state, international, etc. And then finally, we have databases that are proprietary, subscription databases, like the ones that the library provides for you or that you can subscribe to on your own. My mom used to subscribe to a genealogy database. Or there are things that are freely available, government databases, Google Books, Flickr, etc. So I just want to remind you, although we're not really talking about the library catalog, that library catalogs are databases too, because they enable you to find books, and these days, as our library catalogs transition to what we call discovery systems, they're also enabling you to find things like articles, and even these days, in our library catalog, you can find things like the Daily Evergreen from 100 years ago, or all sorts of other things there. All right, any questions at this point? Hi, Kari, I just saw you come in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next slide, and we're going to talk kind of from the very beginning, which is, anytime I'm actually doing some work with a database, it's because I'm starting from a question. And I'm a really big believer in really kind of being 24/7 on when you're looking for interesting topics. I think that a lot of times people, when they're given a paper assignment, they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have to write the sociology paper, and I really can't think of anything. Whereas if they think about things that they saw in the newspaper or on Twitter or on Facebook, all of a sudden it turns out that there's loads of stuff that are kind of going behind us on our screens or in our newspapers that actually are relevant to something sociological. So this is one of my favorite sources. This is the Pew Research Center, and they have a Center for the Study of the Internet and Society, and they do some amazing work. Very good social science, by the way, on survey data. And this is an article talking about lack of broadband can be a key obstacle, especially for job seekers. And what this is really talking about is a concept called the digital divide. And the digital divide is something I'm really interested in. It's something that really has changed over the last 20 years. The original digital divide was, do you have Ethernet versus dial-up, or do you have dial-up at all? Do you have any sort of internet access? These days, the digital divide is morphing to, is your only way you access the internet on a mobile device, or do you have access to it on a computer? Do you have a fast connection or a slow connection? So what I did here was I got the idea of the digital divide, and then I went and did a little bit of pre-searching, and maybe we'll do a webinar on that. And I found this nice definition from the Encyclopedia of New Media, which gives me a sort of broader notion. And one of the things that I want to do is anytime I'm looking at my original article or looking at my encyclopedia pre-search article from Wikipedia or Encyclopedia of New Media, etc., I'm looking for terminology. I'm looking for ideas and concepts that I might research. And I see a number here. I see the phrase digital divide, information rich, global divide, gap, internet, civic participation, consumers, internet resources. All of these are terms that I might go ahead and use when I'm doing my searching. So, any questions? Yes. No worries, no worries. And for those of you like Hari who just arrived, remember this will be archived, and you'll be able to catch up very shortly through the Global Campus's YouTube site. So, any questions? Okay. So let's go on and talk a little bit. Now we've kind of started off with our topic, you know, we're kind of thinking about it a little bit. So even before we actually go look at a database, there's still some work that we have to do. And this can really help you a lot, because what happens a lot of times is people just kind of think about their topic and then they just jump into a database, throw in some keywords and start going. Whereas spending a little bit of time using these tools that we get through our database search toolkit can really make a much better way for us to do things. And by the way, when I ask what kind of database, what I'm really asking, and by the way, I just realized I didn't quite respond to this, how do I know which one to use? So I'll kind of respond to that as we go along. But here, I want to emphasize that the specific things that I'm talking about here are mainly for the proprietary databases that the library subscribes to. And I draw that distinction because one of the reasons that we subscribe to databases is not just for the content, but also for the ability to do the kind of precise searching that this search toolkit items enable us to do, to create what we call search syntax, to create a search strategy with things that kind of are pretty much, may change a little bit from database to database, but pretty much are universally available. So
quick question, Lorena.
Yes.
Bradley would like to know, was the Pew a database?
Now see, that is a really good question. Because actually, if you go to it, it's a website. Just search Pew Internet and you'll find it. Maybe we'll do that when we look at the web. And we'll see that it's not precisely a database because it's not going to give us that ability to do fielded search. But what it is, oddly enough, is it is a database in a way. Because in addition to the reports that they have, one of the things that they do is they actually provide the raw data. And the raw data is available in a way that you can download it and manipulate it yourself. So it's kind of both. Most people are just going to see it as a website with reports. But if you go a step lower and you actually go find the places where they make the data available to download, you'll discover that they are actually enabling you to use the database that they use to create these reports. So a little bit kind of shades of gray, and that's true for virtually everything when you start talking about things. You know, it's sort of like there's always going to be something that's a little bit of an anomaly, not exactly, you know, anything, sort of always spread in the middle, neither fish nor frog. Does that answer your question, Bradley? Excellent. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is talk about keywords. And keywords are really the foundation of searching because, as we saw, there are many different ways to express a concept. And one of the things I want to talk about is you're going to look at digital divide, you're going to look at broadband, and you're like, well, you know, those are two completely different things. Digital divide is really a sociological concept, but broadband is like, well, it's a technology. But the thing is, it's all about the context. If I'm doing research about the digital divide, and one of the things that I realized is that broadband is an essential aspect of it. So it's all about the context. It turns out that the digital divide is a term that kind of came into being in the late part of the 1990s, early part of the 2000s. But it's not something that's always used. It's like a catchy little term. But so it turns out that sometimes you actually might be doing better doing a more contextual search, looking at broadband. If I look at broadband and rural, then actually in between the conjunction of those two concepts really is the digital divide. So what I'm saying is that our keywords are not always straight synonyms. Digital divide does not mean the same thing as broadband. But for our purpose, articles about digital divide in rural areas and articles about broadband in rural areas are probably going to cover a lot of the same territory. So we can think of other terms that we might use here, and we'll see some of those when we go do our searching. Technology, internet, information technology, telecommunications, there's all sorts of terminology that will kind of enable us access to look at that. So that's the first thing, is we have to have some terms directly plug into our database. The second thing is phrase searching. If I just type in digital divide into a database, what it is virtually always reading is digital and divide. So what I might be getting is stuff about on the Continental Divide Ranch, they have this really cool digital artwork. So, not really what I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do instead is, because I have a very specific phrase, digital divide, I'm going to put it in quotation marks. So I'm going to search the word digital followed by the word divide. It's dangerous in a couple of ways. First one is, if I make a typo, it's garbage in, garbage out. That's what it's searching. And second of all, sometimes, I have to be really careful to not put in something that's too esoteric. If I put in, Lorena is really interested in the digital divide in quotation marks, you're probably not going to find very much. So I really want to usually look at a very specific phrase, a phrase that is often used. United States, Washington State, digital divide, go Cougs, all things that we think of in that context. And if it turns out when I'm searching for digital divide and I don't find very much using it as a phrase, then I get rid of those quotation marks and I go ahead and search for it as digital and divide. And sometimes I find it there, because maybe what the good stuff is talking about the digital, the divide between those who have access to digital internet versus those who don't. So something like that. So that's our first element of our toolkit. Let's look at the second part of it. The second part of it is, the first thing is truncation wildcards, and this is hugely powerful. So here is LIBRAR asterisk. In most databases, about 80% of databases will use the asterisk as our truncation symbol. Some may use an exclamation point or a question mark, but it's usually an asterisk. And this is so powerful because this is going to search library, libraries, librarian, all things that are relevant. So I get my plurals and my variants. Finally, let's look at connectors and intersections, and this is how we kind of can expand or narrow our search. I'm going to first of all expand my search. I want things that mention digital divide, and notice no quotation marks, so digital and divide. Both of those terms have to be there, but not necessarily together, or the word broadband. So I'm saying either one of these is okay. Or I can narrow my search. It has to have digital divide, and it has to have, look, I truncated wrong. Look at that. See my big error right there? That's sloppy. Because that means I'm not going to get libraries or librarian, etc. You've got to watch out where you put that truncation symbol. And by the way, the and, I don't need to put that in. Digital divide and library is the same thing as digital divide library. Notice that my connectors are in capital letters. This is really important. And or are such common words that most databases actually are going to skip right over them. So if I put them in lowercase, they would be ignored, and it would be searching for digital and divide and broadband, which is not necessarily what I want. So I always make sure that I put them in capital letters. So I like this diagram as an example of how to kind of think about the ors and the ands. All of us have probably bought furniture at some point. So you can see that if I want something that is comfortable and affordable, in most, it's probably going to be but ugly. If I want something that is comfortable, affordable, and good looking, you can see that the last one just sold. If I want something that is both good looking and affordable, it looks like it feels like a rock. So you can see how I'm kind of narrowing and getting my results. If I want to expand my results, if I want something that is comfortable or affordable, then I get things that are comfortable, things that are affordable, and that intersection of both of them. So I get the complete set of this circle and this circle. But if I am comfortable and affordable, I'm just getting that intersection right over there. So this is kind of a good way to think about anding and oring as a way of sort of expanding or narrowing your search. So the last thing we do for our toolkit is we bring it all together. If I'm in a database that gives me multiple boxes, I'm going to search digital divide or broadband, my synonyms, and library. And you can see, look, I made that same mistake there. I can't believe it. That's what you get for cut and pasting. But here I did it properly. Here I only have one box. And look what I did. I put in parentheses. Do you guys remember doing math and precedence order? That's what I'm doing here. This is my real search. I'm saying digital divide and some variant of library, or broadband and some variant of library. Both of these are going to give me my search. So you can see both of these are essentially the same thing, and there are different ways to actually do my search depending on whether I have multiple boxes or just one box, as some databases do. Okay. Yes, Carrie just asked, digital divide or broadband is different than quotation digital divide and quotation or broadband. That's absolutely right, because digital divide is digital and divide, And it's really kind of, if I didn't have the quotation marks there, I'd really kind of maybe put it in parentheses because there'd be a default and there. Does that kind of make sense? Or I would do digital divide or broadband and library. The question marks are really just a way of kind of doing the order of operations. I put things together. You can see here I'm ORing my stuff inside the parentheses, or I could AND my stuff. I could say digital divide and broadband, so it has to have both of those and library. But usually you're going to use the parentheses to OR your stuff together, and we'll kind of do a little bit more of this when we actually go into the database. So this is really just a way, because if we didn't have the quotation, if we didn't have the parentheses, computers are stupid. They move from left to right. Without the parentheses, this is what we would be searching: the phrase digital divide or broadband and libraries. So what we would really be searching is stuff that has the phrase digital divide or stuff that has both the term broadband and some variant of the term libraries. So by putting the parentheses in there, it makes it really clear: digital divide and variant of libraries, or broadband and variant of libraries. Tricky, but we'll see the difference when we actually start doing some searching. Any questions about that, or did I fully answer your question, Carrie? Yes, exactly. That's what I always say in class. It's precedence order. It is the distributive property of algebra. That is exactly what we're doing here. If you know math, if you know algebra, you know how to do this. Okay, so let's go on. So I'm going to, in a second, we'll actually go in and find how I get to this. But one of the things that I want to emphasize is that the library has kind of a couple different places where you can actually locate databases. All of our databases are included in our library catalog. So if I go ahead and search for sociological abstracts, I'll find a link to it there. We also have these library guides, and we'll be taking a look at those in just a second. The library guides give us access to databases, but also other things as well. And these library guides are curated by librarians. So we'll be looking at a couple that I did. If you know exactly what you're looking for, if you know you're looking for a particular database, or you want to kind of see things, if you're just looking for databases, you don't care about the rest of it, you can go to our Find Article pages, which offers some other options as well. And we'll take a look at both of those. Don't be scared of math. Math and art and searching, it's all the same thing. All right, so let's go ahead and actually start doing some searching. So let's start off with Academic Search Complete. And Academic Search Complete is a database that I really like because it's multidisciplinary. It's going to have astronomy, it's going to have social science, it's going to have chemistry, it's going to have all sorts of stuff. And it has multiple information types, which again we'll talk about at a future webinar. So we're going to get scholarly stuff as well as opinion articles and popular magazine articles and different sorts of things. So I like this database a lot. It's a really good starting place when you're doing your research. And you can see we've got a link right here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to actually move into the online environment. So cross your fingers and let's let this work. I'm going to go over here and do a web tour, and I'm going to go to the libraries page, libraries.wsu.edu, and here I am. Is everybody seeing that? Excellent. Okay, so from the library's home page, first of all, I'm going to show you the Find Journal Articles page right here. And you can see this is where you can look at our trials, things that we're testing out right now, a little bit of information about off-campus access, the extremely important Help with Online Access Issues page. If you're running into a problem with a database, you want to use this because when you fill out the form, it captures a lot of information that's really important. This is very important for distance students who often are dealing with, all sorts of issues with their internet access. So I wanted to point that out. Finding full text, some information here. But most of the time you can see where we can either look at our databases A to Z and actually get a complete list of everything that we have that starts with an H, or we can go back and look for particular databases by subject. But I'm going to go back over here to the library's homepage. Notice I just clicked the libraries. And what we're going to do is we're going to go look in our subject and resource guide link right over here, which is that page that I showed you. And you can see a wide variety of subject guides on various number of things. Here's a bunch of our librarians and some of our featured guides. And I'm going to go ahead and you can see there's ebooks. Maybe I'll do a webinar on ebooks. I'm kind of interested in that. So I'm going to do a search. And what I'm going to search for is I'm going to go about this a little bit of a different way. I'm searching for pre-search, which is what you do before research. And the reason I'm searching for pre-search is if I wanted to look for encyclopedia articles, etc., I could do that. But I actually created on this page a Finding Articles link because I found that there really wasn't any place that we could go to for sort of general sorts of interdisciplinary resources. So I created this one.
Quick question, Lorena.
Yes.
Bradley would like to know, again, where did you click to get the subject tab?
All right, here I am at the library's homepage. Under the Research tab right here, I clicked on Subject and Resource Guides. And then you can see inside of here, here's all my 55 subjects. And there's a little search box here. When I search box for this, I'm not searching for articles, I'm searching for databases. So, or for the names of a guide. So I'm going to type in pre-search, which I totally misspelled. Let's go ahead and search. There it is, Pre-Search, Exploratory, and Background Resources. And you can see from here, this is the Home tab. There's another tab coming up at the topic, and here is our Finding Articles tab, which is what we want right now. And let's take a look at this, because here's some examples of the different databases that I talked about. Filmmakers Library Online, really good resource for distance students because this is streaming media. This is streaming documentaries. So this is a format database. It's all streaming media. New York Times, these are newspaper databases. They are also format databases. If we look over here, Academic Search Complete is an interdisciplinary database. Social Science Abstracts is sort of a broad-based disciplinary database because it covers all of the social sciences, or at least how they define them. Let's go ahead and look at Academic Search Complete. So what you would normally do is just click on this, but if I click on this, what it does is open up a window that y'all can't see. So I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on this, and I am going to copy shortcut. And I'm going to go back to my little thing here that lets me add in website links. There we are. I'm going to paste in my link. And this is going to take me, since I'm at on the WSU Network, it's going to take me directly into Academic Search Complete. If you are not on the WSU Network, before you got to this spot, you would have to log in with your WSU Network ID. So let's go ahead and take a look at this database. Most of the time when people go into a database, they just start throwing in terms here. But I want you to kind of look down at the search options. Because if we wanted to, we could pre-filter our search. We could say, I only want things published between a particular year. I only want things that are newspapers. I only want things that are in Afrikaans, document types, etc. I actually do not usually do this. I very rarely do I pre-filter because all of these filtering options are going to be, most of them, all the ones that I would actually ever want, is going to be available to me when I actually do my search. And I actually believe if I pre-filter, I'm going to lose a little bit of serendipity. So I'd rather filter once I see my results. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And I'm going to do a very basic search, digital divide, in quotation marks. And I'm also looking at it from the perspective of rural. So see what I'm doing here? Here's my two concepts. Here's my digital divide. Here's my and. Here's my rural. Let's look at a couple of things. One of these things is select a field. Right now I'm searching for the phrase digital divide anywhere in the record, but you can see if I wanted to, I could look for it specifically in the title or as a subject term or in a journal name, etc. But I'm not going to do that right now. Where I'm anding it here, that's what I'm pretty much always going to do, but you can see I have some options here. And is, kind of narrowing my search, or is expanding my search. Not, I usually stay away from not. Not is saying, let's say you're doing research on Wolverine, the X-Men character, and you keep on getting stuff about that new Wolverine that was sighted in Michigan. So you might not Wolverine in Michigan or Wolverine the animal. But that's very dangerous because...
Will you press search real quick, Lorena? It's not letting us show what you typed up.
Oh, okay. Let me try that again. So let me...
If you just click search.
There we are. Okay, so you seeing my results?
Let's try typing in one more time.
All right, so digital divide. And this is complex stuff to do on something like this, so it's not surprising that there might be a few bobbles. All right, so everyone's seeing our results. We should be seeing 204 results.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go ahead ahead and take a look at these. First of all, remember what I said. Right over here is the ability to refine if I want. I can narrow it to full text. I don't want to do that because if I narrow it to full text, I'm only looking at full text within this database. And the Find It button lets me get more full text. But here I can narrow it to peer-reviewed stuff if I want to. I can narrow by year of publication date. I can either put in the year or I can use my slider. I can narrow by my source type. And then you can see over here I can narrow by all these other things as well, virtually everything that was available to me when I was doing my pre-filtering. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these things. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of look. Oh, this one looks interesting. Let's look at number 3, closing the digital divide. Looks like there's a PDF there in this case, so my PDF is directly there, unlike this one where I would have to use Find It at WSU to see if WSU has access. So I'm going to click on closing the digital divide. So I'm going from the results page to the record page. So we're not actually going to focus on looking at the article right now. We're staying right here in the database. So let's look around this database a little bit. First of all, you can see a database because it has fields. And so we look over there. We have authors. All of these are searchable. If I wanted to, I could say I want things by Edmondson that have a subject type young workers. So when we look at this, first thing we want to do is we want to look and see if this is relevant. So one of the things we see, oh, digital divide in the title, probably relevant. Let's look at these subject terms because these subject terms may help me find other good stuff because maybe I'm not using the right terminology. So I probably want to have a piece of paper next to me and I want to write down some of these terms. There's broadband, rural telecommunication, internet access. So we found this because there's rural and there's digital divide. You can see exactly why we actually found this. So I want to look at this and pull out terms that I might want to add to my search. I might say, oh, broadband. I might say digital divide or broadband. I might narrow. Probably not going to do rural telecommunication, but I might do digital divide or broadband or telecommunication, assuming that the rural part of it is always going to bring in issues of the digital divide. So I want to kind of play around with these terms. I'm not always going to use these, but I might say that's just too esoteric, but I probably want to play around with it, and we'll do that in just a second. But I want to look around a little bit more.
Lorena,
so let's
if you click on a blue term, will it automatically start a new search for that term?
Yes, and I'm not going to do that right now because honestly I don't know what it would do in sort of in this environment, but yes it would. And in fact, if sometimes what happens is I do this a lot when I'm searching the library catalog. You know how sometimes you start clicking and clicking and clicking and then you forget where you started and you know there was something good and you can't remember where it was? Everyone's done that. So a lot of times what I'll do, especially in our library catalog, is I will right-click on these subject terms and have it open up in another tab so I don't lose this search. But I can't always do that in databases. Sometimes they won't let me do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So here's all our information about the article. Look over here, and you can see I have a number of options. I can print this out. I can email this to myself. If you email it to yourself, it's really important. A lot of times when you email yourself something from a database, it comes from a really funky email address, and so it may end up in your spam folder. So if you know you emailed it to yourself and you don't see it, check your spam folder. So that is why, because of that problem, sometimes what you may want to do is use a reference management program like Zotero or EndNote, or use the service that is built right inside of this database. Let's go up to the top. See where it says sign in? I'm going to sign in, and let's see, yes, good, you all can see that. And I'm going to sign in with the account that I have already created. But you can see that you all can create an account right there. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. Now what this is this account now, you can see there I am, is not just for this database, Academic Search Complete, but from all EBSCO databases. And if I go over and look at my folder, then you can see these are things that I have saved at some point. And I can move them into folders, I can save them here, I can share them with other people, I can do all sorts of stuff. So sometimes, you know, rather than emailing things to myself where it might get lost in my email, what I do is I save them in my folders, and then it's easier for me to remember that they're there, as long as I remember to log in. In addition to the ability to save things into folders and do other cool things like save ebooks or save searches, notice over here under Preferences, if I want, I can change the way things look. And one thing I want y'all to notice, see where it says results per page? Virtually every database has a default results per page of 10. And I always go in and change that because this is a mental thing. I ask this every time I teach a class. When you're doing a search, whether you're searching an internet search engine like Google or you're in a database, when you get your results, how many pages do you look through? Most people look through 2 through 3. If you have 10 results, that means you're looking through 20 or 30 items. So what I do is I fake myself. I say, you know, I'm probably going to do that too. Just look at 10 to 20 to 2 or 3 pages. So I make them bigger. So I'm looking at 30 or 40 articles per page. Let's change this to 40. And so now I'm more likely to find good stuff if I'm still going to look at 2 pages, but instead of seeing 20 things, I see 80 things. And I don't have to be logged in with my preferences to do this, but now anytime I'm logged in, it remembers that I have all of this. So there's all sorts of cool things that I can do with page layout and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to save this.
Are you able to customize those folders, Lorena?
Yes, you can create your own folders. You can have them with subject terms. You can do all sorts of cool things. And like I said, this is not just this EBSCO database, this is all the EBSCO databases. And I really encourage people to take advantage of creating an account, saving things in folders, and changing preferences to make things work for them. The other thing I want to point out here is help. And this is really important. You guys aren't going to see this, so I'm just going to describe this. This opened up a pop-out window which tells me how to search EBSCO databases. It gives me a search strategy, all the things that I don't have time to actually show because we don't have time enough for this. But I really encourage people to actually look at the help or search assistance or search tips or whatever they're called. Okay, so let's go back to our search. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the back button here. Always use in a database, to the extent you can, always use the internal navigation. Otherwise, you might kind of stall your search out and have to start all over again. So we're going to kind of look at a few of these things. Let's go back over here to my result list. And if we start looking at things, you know, as we kind of look through over these things, navigating the digital divide, let's look at this one right here. We're going to start seeing, you know, as we look at these terms, we're seeing the similar terms coming up. This one's a little bit different. This is not something I'm really interested in. This is, you know, this went a different direction. But let's say I look through all of these, and now I'm like, okay, I gotta add some more terms here. So I'm going to say digital divide, and notice what I'm just doing here: broadband or internet. And then I'm going to do rural. Let's see what happens. So I had 204 responses. Now, oh my gosh, too many of them. Too many responses. So I got to narrow it a little bit. Maybe let's throw in, you know what happened here? When I just threw in broadband or internet, I got rid of that concept of the digital divide, that concept of the gap. So I got to put that back in. Let's add in the word access. So research. Aha, a little bit more manageable. Okay, the thing is that my topic is too broad anyway. So normally I would have done this a lot earlier when I was kind of thinking about things, but I really need to narrow my topic. So let's actually narrow it by adding on another, there should be a way for me to add on another field here. Let's go back over here to advanced search and see if it lets me do that in advanced search. No, it doesn't. It's very aggravating. Usually you can add another term, and it's not letting me do that. So I'm just going to throw it in here. See what I'm doing here?
Will you refresh it, Lorena? We can't see.
Yeah, do that. Let's see. Okay, usually a database will enable you to add another box, and it didn't. So see what I did there? I stuck library right over here. So now it has to have either the term digital divide or the term broadband or the term internet, and it has to have the term rural, and it has to have the term access, and it has to have a variant of the term library. And see how by doing that I narrowed it to 105, which is much more manageable? So let's go over here. Let's go look at something. I lost my mouse over here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to actually stop looking at Academic Search Complete now, because I want to go back and look at the other two databases, because we only have 20 minutes left. So, but I hope I've given you some idea of thinking about all these things. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize is that you're going to make a lot of false starts, which is why it's really handy to have that sheet of paper next to you when you're doing this and write all this stuff down so that you know kind of what's going on. Because you're going to make mistakes and things aren't going to work, and you want to keep a list of good terminology, etc. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go back, all the way. Actually, I can just go over here. I should be able to get back to the WSU library. See the little WSU libraries icon here? I'm going to click on that. That's going to take me back to the library. It's going to take me back to not what I want it to take me back to. So I'm going back to the main library page by clicking on Libraries in the banner. I'm going back to my subject guide. All right, so we're going to go to Catalogs and Databases. And see my little link right there? Here's Sociological Abstracts. Now, oops, I did it the wrong way. Let's try that again. I'm going to open this. I'm going to copy these shortcuts. And I'm going to go back, and let's hope this works. Okay, is everyone seeing Sociological Abstracts?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, now you'll notice that in this case we've moved away from EBSCO and we're looking at ProQuest. But it has some of the same properties that EBSCO has where I can create an account. So I'm going to do that before I do anything else. I'm going to go over here to this person and I'm going to sign into my research with my account. And when you create these accounts, trust me, I learned this the hard way, always use the same username and password. And make it something easy. No one is going to be able to identify you because of your ProQuest password. All right, so now we're in here, and you can see again, I'm able to save documents, and you see this even enables me to kind of create notes. I really prefer the ProQuest interface a little bit more, and I can save other things as well. But I'm going to go back over here to Sociological Abstracts, and we go to Advanced Search. Everybody at Advanced Search? Notice here we have the ability to add a row. Now let's take a look at this. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of abbreviate this because I'm running out of time. So what I'm going to do, digital divide, and then I'm going to go, digital divide. Let's say or broadband, or internet, and then I'm going to say access, rural. Let's see. Let's just jump to the library part. See what I'm doing there? And if I wanted to, I could add a row, which would enable me to do more things. But I'm going to go ahead and do the search. When I do my search, again, notice I could pre-filter here. Okay, I get 238 results. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. Notice, okay, they're asking me, do I mean this? And I'm like, no, I didn't mean this at all. Okay, so I get lots of results here. And I'm like, you know, I don't like these results because I lost that access component here. So I got to go back. Now, I'm really emphasizing how I screw up and I go back. So I think I really do need to add in that access part right here. Okay. So I'm going to do my search. Okay, now a little bit more reasonable. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to notice is, let's take a look at this item here, exclusion from communication facing the digital divide. I'm going to look at this, and I want you to notice something. When I look at these subjects, I see internet, but I also see digital divide. So if we go back to our results, I want to show you another aspect of databases that can be really cool. And this has to do with vocabulary. I'm going to go back again all the way to my advanced search, because all of a sudden now I have a suspicion. When we were looking at Academic Search Complete, digital divide was an official term. We actually saw it show up in those subject lists. But I didn't see digital divide in that one, even though it was right in the title. So I would think any indexer would add that in. So I'm going to go over here to this thing called a thesaurus. Because and this is actually, this isn't going to show up right, but what I'll just describe this to you. What this enables me to do is type in my term digital divide and see if it's an official term in this database. And it turns out it's not. And that's really important because databases all have their own vocabulary. Digital divide is not an official term in this database, so we're not ever going to see it in the subject list. Although we will see it in the abstract, we'll see it in the title, we'll see it in other places. So that really means I need to think about other terminology to get around the same concept as the digital divide. The other thing that I wanted to mention is let's make our search, let's abbreviate our search to just the digital divide. Let's try this again. And libraries. We're getting rid of everything else. Because when I do that, you're going to see I don't get a huge number of results. I get 20, and really I'm not sure how many of these are actually really relevant to libraries. And the thing is that sometimes a database is not the right database. It might be that if I'm interested in libraries and the digital divide, I shouldn't be looking at a sociology database, because sociology is more like I'd be looking at that for things about the digital divide and inequality, the digital divide and race or rural areas or underclass issues, but not necessarily the aspect of libraries. So I might think, oh, I should go look at a different sort of database, maybe a library database or a more computer-oriented database or something else like that. So if you're not getting very much, sometimes you're in the wrong database. The other thing I want to talk about is, let's go back to actually thinking about our results. Now, I've only got 20 results in this case, so there's not that many to actually look at. But I want to show you something else that I do. Imagine that we're back at our list where we have like 200 or 300 results. Remember how I said that people don't actually look at more than 2 or 3 pages? I know, come on, you guys don't either. So again, I'm going to show you a way to fool yourself. So let's go look at the sort. Databases have the ability to sort themselves based upon the information. Most of them will default to relevance. What does relevance mean? It usually means that articles show up more often, the terms show up more close together, etc. Let's resort this, oldest first. And we're going to start seeing some articles that appeared back when the digital divide was starting to really being talked about in 2001. So I might see things in an entirely different way. Let's look at it most recent first. So now we see the most recent thing. So this is another way to kind of mix things up a little bit and surface things that you might not otherwise have seen. So again, if I want to, in addition to narrowing or expanding my topic using terminology like I've been doing over here, I can use my filters. I just want stuff that's peer-reviewed. I just want scholarly journals. I want things published within a particular period. Maybe I might want to kind of narrow things by sort of some broader sort of subject areas, or even maybe some particular publications. This might give me a sense, oh look, 2 dissertations, 2 articles from the Journal Information Society, etc. So just some things to think about when you're doing your search, to kind of putting all of this stuff together. All right, I want to do one last thing. So we're going to go back over here. Anybody have any questions? We're going to look at one more thing very briefly, and this you all will have access to because we're going to Google Scholar. So I'm going to scholar.google.com. Google. Okay. All right, so here we are in Google Scholar, which is something that a lot of people use. And the thing is that Google Scholar can be a really good database to work with. But the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that it's set up for Washington State University. So we're going to go over to Settings. And look, here's our results to page. Let's bump this up to 20. Then we're going to go to Library Links. And you can see that WSU is already checked here. But if you don't see WSU checked here, you want to do a search for Washington State University, and you want to make sure it's all checked. Because when you do this, let's go back. Let's go do a search in Google Scholar. Save. Okay, so I'm going to do my search, digital divide, in quotation marks. Now, I can't use truncation symbols in Google. It won't let me do that. But Google does something on its own called lemmatization, where it does sort of automatic truncation. So if I type in libraries, it's also, oops, let's fix that typo right there. It's also going to search for library and librarian. So it'll automatically give me plurals and variants without my having to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and do my search here. So when I do my search, the thing is that the good stuff, I'm getting lots of things that I might not necessarily have gotten from my other databases. That includes international publications. Our databases don't really do a good job of non-United States publications. So Google Scholar actually brings all of those in, and that can be really, really, really wonderful. Let's go ahead and take a look. You can see, by the way, because I have that WSU access in here, now I see Find It at WSU. And if we don't have access to an article, Find It at WSU will take me to our library catalog, and we can actually see the article there. And the video that I show will show you some other cool things that you can do. Notice some very basic filtering here by time, and I can do a few other things. Let's go take a look at one particular article. I'm going to go look at this one right here. If I click on this, it actually takes me directly to the PDF through an institutional repository. But what I want to actually, and you can see there's a link to it right there. But what I want to show you is, see if I look down a little bit, let's look at these things over here. because these are things that were also in those other databases, but I was kind of running out of time, so I went really fast, so I'll put them in the video. But look at this. Let's click on Cited by 1,129. Let's right-click on this and open it in another tab. Let's see if this will work. I'm just going to open it here. And these are all articles or books that cited this. And that's another way of finding relevant things. Keywords is what we all traditionally use, but the citation train, if the Deepening Divide, Inequality in Information Society cited second-level digital divide, mapping differences in people's online skills, you get a sense that they're probably related. So that can be a really good way to find extra things. Let's see this thing that says related articles. Let's click on this. What this means is that these articles share a lot the same citations. So if they share the same citations, they're probably related. So we're seeing another way to actually find good stuff without actually kind of really focusing on keywords. Yeah, that's exactly what it's doing. It's combing through people's bibliography to coming up with this cited by number. That's something that Google Scholar kind of keeps track of. In fact, we'll go look at, I'll show you that at the very end. Now let's look at something else. This is very basic. You know, I can't do the kind of elaborate searching that I could do in our library databases, but I can go to advanced search. And advanced search lets me do a little bit more of the sort of interesting searching, because I can say, look, here is all of my words, it's the regular word, exact phrase, that's digital divide, doesn't put the quotation marks in there, but it's there. Let's see if I can find some, let's look at Novak. I can put in an author. Oh, are you guys seeing this? I forgot about this is kind of a pop-up window. You're not seeing this, unfortunately, but it will give me some options. Now you can see what I did there. I added in the ability to search, and these are things that I get are all things that have been authored or co-authored by somebody named Novak. Novak could be first name, Novak could be last name, whatever. But this is a way for me to kind of narrow my search a little bit more. So a lot of people don't always see the advanced search, which shows up when you click on this little thing right over here, but it's very powerful and enables you to do some really cool things. So Google Scholar is really good for kind of expanding your search because it really searches a lot of stuff. That's a good part of it. The bad part of it is, first of all, we don't know what's in it. We don't know what Google is searching. Google's not searching particular journals. Google is searching by articles. We don't know what they are. We don't have those elaborate field codes, so it's not as much of a database, at least to us, because we're not able to specifically say we want to search by a particular subject. There is no subject classification here. Google also has complete control over this. If they wanted to take it down tomorrow, they could do so, and we would have nothing to say about it. We're not paying them any money for it. This is a service they provide. And it only actually includes things that can be crawled. And increasingly, a lot of people are actually putting HTML coding into their stuff so that Google can't crawl it and it can't find it. Usually, though, in the library world, in the database world, people want their stuff to be found, so they're not putting that in. The other thing you'll notice is there's a lot of full text here. That's one of the positive things. Google does a really good job of actually trying to find some full text somewhere, a preprint or on a repository or on somebody's home page, so they can provide free content. So this is a really important resource for people. I just wanted to talk about this. And let's kind of go back to, in our last few minutes here, let's go back over here. How do I know which one to use? I use Academic Search Complete usually at the start of a project. You know, when I want something interdisciplinary, I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. I want to kind of go broad. I want to kind of go loose. I use sociological abstracts when I really want to look at something through the lens of a discipline. I'm looking specifically at a sociological aspect, inequality, race, rural versus urban. Those are all things that are sociological, so it kind of makes sense. If I wanted to look at it from the perspective of, say, fiber, laid fiber, I might not look at sociological abstracts. I might look at a computer database or go back to this database over here. Google Scholar I use to surface things that I might not otherwise find. It's kind of a black box. I don't really know how it works. I don't know what's in it, whereas I do with all of these, but I might find some cool stuff that I wouldn't otherwise have found. All of these databases usually enable me to do something of that find by citation stuff, etc. I'll do a whole other webinar on citation searching because it's actually really interesting. So the last slide here, just on some resources. So this is the URL that will take you to the YouTube channel that I created for the ones right now. The only one that I've done is my long-winded, you might figure that out, 18-minute Academic Search Complete deep dive video, but I'll be adding one for sociological abstracts and one for Google Scholar over the next couple of days. One thing I want to emphasize, Academic Search Complete, this is not really a very good kind of how-to thing, but it shows you that with our library databases, you can go and find explicitly what titles are being indexed by that, something that we don't know with Google. Sociological Abstracts is a really nice help page. It's just very detailed. ProQuest does excellent work. Google Scholar Help, everyone should take a look at that. And finally, of course, I said, you know, as you can see, this isn't really a deep dive. We've really kind of been snorkeling or splashing around. You're the ones who are going to do the deep dive when you really start diving into all the cool things that you can do with these databases when you don't just throw in a couple of terms, click search, look at the first 2 pages of results that have 10 results each, and then take it from there. If you think about things in a broader way. All right, any questions? You guys are like, oh my gosh, that was just so much, you went so fast. That's why this is being recorded. Yes. Okay, the first question was about accounts. And the thing about the account is it is independent of WSU. If you had, let's say, let's say you were going over to the University of Washington and using their library there. You could actually log in using your ProQuest account or your EBSCO account and save stuff there. The problem is that if you save something when you're at the University of Washington that they have access to that we don't have access to, you will not be able to get access to it when you come back over here, when you're not in their IP range. And in fact, most of our databases, and in fact most publishers, allow you to create those accounts. I didn't actually talk today. I only talked about 3 different types of databases, and maybe if I do another one of these, I'll talk about publisher sites because they are really cool databases that are not really databases. But most every database will enable you to create that kind of account that will enable you to save stuff, save searches. And it's really, really helpful. So look for that. Look usually, you know, in the upper part of your database and see if there's some sort of My Research or Login or My Folder. Even if you don't do that, a lot of databases will enable you to create a temporary folder, and then you can send yourself stuff at the very end of it. But I like creating a permanent folder and having that stuff permanently saved there. I really encourage people to do that. You can also do that on Searchit. Searchit has the eShelf that enables you to do a number of these things as well. It's very powerful. The other thing is, by the way, it's very powerful, very nice, but if you really, really, really want to save stuff that's not sitting there on a database's server, then you should use a reference management program like Zotero, which I teach, or EndNote, or Mendeley, or ReadCube, or Citavi, or all the others that are out there. Okay. Second question, how did I get to ProQuest? All right, what I did was, I'm going to just quickly, I went to the library homepage, and then I went to that, let's see if I can do that here. I'm not going to worry about that. I went to the library homepage, then I clicked on that subject guide, and then I went to sociology, and I chose the Sociological Abstracts database. So I wasn't really in ProQuest, because ProQuest is a platform. I was in the Sociological Abstracts database, which is a database within that ProQuest platform. I'll tell you something though, if you like, we didn't really talk about this, but if you're in an EBSCO database or a ProQuest database, if you poke around, you'll see that there actually has the ability to do something called meta search, where you can actually search all of our ProQuest databases or all of our EBSCO databases at the same time. Although you lose a lot of that subject searching capacity because subjects are oftentimes database specific, not platform specific, if that makes sense. Very powerful. Cool way to find, you know, it's one of those things if you're just not finding anything and you're just like, I need to just really kind of loosen up. I do that sometimes, and I find interesting things. I'd be like, who knew that I would have found that in a chemistry database or in a news database or something else like that? Does that answer your question? Excellent. So hopefully, let me kind of remind you, in 2 weeks I'm doing another one of these. I completely forget what it's about. I hope Josh remembers. And then 2 weeks after that, I'm doing another one. And at some point, I hope to come back and talk about databases. I'd really like to talk about citation databases, and I really like to talk about pre-searching. So I think those are really cool things to talk about in the future. And we'll see if we can kind of iron out the database problem. Maybe it just won't work, and I'll just have to make videos. We'll try to make sure that it kind of creates something that will enable that content to be shared with Global Campus and other students. Thank you all for coming. Really appreciate you giving us an hour on a school night. That's a big deal. And remember, this is going to be archived, and you'll be able to come back to it. You'll be able to stop and replay and go, what we should say. Oh, that's the nice thing about having a video that you can stop and start. And don't forget, the academic search complete search video is available now, and I'll be adding one for sociological abstracts and Google Scholar over the next couple days, but probably not tomorrow. Capturing citations on search site. What do you mean by that, Bradley? Do you mean like having it formatted in APA style, or? Oh, or like the references, how many times something's cited? Oh yeah, I'll tell you something about that. Not only do they have not always have all the formats, but oftentimes they're wrong. And there's just no way around it. You still have to learn APA style, Chicago style, etc. When they format citations for you, think of it as a starting point, not an ending point. But I'll make sure that I show that in the 2 deep dives on sociological abstracts and Google Scholar that I've not done yet. All right. Don't forget, if you have questions, I'm oenglish@wsu.edu for email. I'm WSU Lorena on Twitter, and I'd be happy to get back with you. Have a good evening.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for attending tonight's webinar. I will be emailing out those links to you that Lorena provided on the last slide tomorrow morning. And I will also be emailing out a link to a survey that I'd like you guys to fill out in order to just give us some thoughts and suggestions on tonight's webinar. We do realize that there were a few technology glitches, but we're hoping to get those figured out. As Lorena mentioned, in 2 weeks from tonight, we will be doing a second webinar, part of the 3 webinar series on journals and the different types and different ways to use them. And then 2 weeks from then, so that one is on February 2nd, and then on February 16th, we'll be concluding the series with a webinar on sources. And next Thursday, we have the opportunity, Global Connections is live streaming the Martin Luther King celebration here on WSU's campus. So if you visit our website at connections.wsu.edu, you can learn more about Jasiri X, who will be the keynote speaker, and also be giving us a workshop that you can stream into. So yeah, go check it out. I look forward to being in touch with you guys, and have a good evening. Thank you.